All right, welcome everyone to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. If you have any questions throughout the show, you can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsNewsRadio@gmail.com. We have a lot of exciting program coming up this week, and we're going to get kicked off this show with a great guest. We've had him on before from Rescue Christians. Is a great organization that helps a lot of Christians. We're going to plug that at the end. Also from the website Shoebat.com. Back to the program, Theodore Shoebat. Theodore, how are you doing out there?
Good. Yourself?
Fantastic. Let's get right into it because last week Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wins re-election, and there was a lot of talk regarding President Obama calling him 2 days later, giving him a kind of fake congratulations.
Yeah.
And I want to first I just want to get your take on it because there's an article talking about how he's an anti-Semite. And was that at all, after the phone call, did that increase in your mind that he's anti-Semitic, or the other way? You thought maybe not as much because he made the phone call?
Well, we've always known that he's anti-Israel. That's I think that's a given. I don't think the phone call really made that more or less conspicuous to us. We've always known that he was anti-Israel, and it was obvious even before Benjamin Netanyahu won the elections. For example, when we had on Shoebat.com, my father actually wrote an article on how Barack Obama was paying a left-wing organization in Israel, encouraging people not to vote for Benjamin Netanyahu. And so Benjamin Netanyahu had to make himself look like he was a very stern, he was going to be a very stern defender of Israel against the other Middle Eastern countries. And so he said, he expressed his disapproval for a two-state solution. And that, I think that bolstered his image and helped him win the elections. But we've always known that he was anti-Israel. So I would say that the phone call didn't really make us come to any further realization of that fact, that he is indeed pro. I would say he's the most pro-Muslim president we've ever had. And just look at what he's doing. The fact that he's donating $4 billion in the next 2 years to the Afghan military. $4 billion for the next 2 years means $4 billion every year for the next 2 years. Well, he's right there helping our enemies. And then you have him having the U.S. military, and I just posted on this today, but you have him now having the U.S. military work side by side with Iranian soldiers. Well, I remember for years hearing about how evil Iran is and how Iran was like the next Third Reich and how Ahmadinejad was the next Hitler. And I've heard so many times people describe Iran as just enemy number one. Well, now Obama is having U.S. Air Force provide surveillance for Iranian soldiers. Not just that, but for 18,000 Shia militia. So now, because ISIS is enemy number one, and ISIS is the new boogeyman that we've created, now the focus is on ISIS as the primary enemy. So America is now working with Iran and now working with Shiite militia. Well, what is that going to do? It's going to enable Iran to really take control over Iraq. Iraq is a majority Shiite country, and Iraq would not mind being controlled by Iran because Iran is the most powerful nation in the Shia Muslim world. And I don't know how much of a religious person you are, but I believe that this is fulfilling Bible prophecy in that you have the vision of Daniel in which the bear has the 3 ribs in its mouth. I think, the bear representing Medo-Persia. The bear stands on one leg, that one leg being Persia, because Media is no longer an empire anymore, and the 3 ribs being Iraq, and the 3 ribs being Iraq being broken down into 3 sections, Shia, Sunni, and Kurds. And now you have Iran really taking control, inundating all of Iraq with tens of thousands of soldiers, not just official military from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, but also Shia militias. Now, we think that ISIS is the most brutal thing since Genghis Khan. If that's how we think, then we are gravely mistaken. the Shiites, I guarantee you, will be far more dark, crueler, and more sadistic than the ISIS will ever be. You already see horror stories coming out of Iraq from what the Shiite are already doing. For example, when they invaded one village, they drove ISIS out, and they told the native population in the village, the Sunni, that is, not the Shiite, the Sunni locals, they told them, if you don't leave, we will kill all of you. And all the Sunnis had to leave. And you've seen one story of a young boy, he went out to buy a loaf of bread and he never returned, and they found his body later on. Shiites killed him. We actually have several videos already leaking into the surface of Shiite militias brutally slaughtering people. And when I mean brutally, I don't mean firing squad. I mean taking numerous human beings and literally cutting them up very slowly with short blades. And the people are still alive, and their entire bodies are lacerated and covered in knife wounds, and they're still alive, and they're slowly cutting them to death. We've posted these videos on Shoebat.com telling people, listen, this is what the Shiites are doing, and everyone is acting as though the Shiites are the new heroes. Everyone is acting as though the Kurds are the new heroes. We don't realize that the difference between ISIS, the Shiite, and the Kurds is two dogs fighting for the same bone, and that's power. And the one that is inferior will act like, the one that is in an inferior position will act like the victim so they can receive international support, and the one who are the superior will act like absolute oppressors. But what we don't realize is that once you give the Kurds power, they will be far more brutal than ISIS. Once you give Shia the power, they'll be far more brutal than ISIS. So we're going to be seeing, as the years transpire, we're going to be seeing very quickly the Shiite now rising up as a dominant force in the Middle East. And they will kill Christians, just like ISIS was killing Christians, but probably in a much more brutal fashion.
Now, the president, when he's doing this, when he's having the U.S. military side by side with Iranian military, what's his explanation for that? It makes no sense. But I know he's got to come up with something to explain why it's happening. So how do you try to pass this off?
Well, they're trying to pass this off because, again, ISIS, the image of ISIS has been exaggerated into this huge enemy, and it's going to take years for us to figure it out. And you had the Iraqi military, and they pretty much got vanquished by ISIS. But then we can show you footage of how the Iranians have dealt with ISIS, and they have dealt with ISIS very, very efficiently. So the American mindset is, why face ISIS ourselves when we can have Iran do all the dirty work for us? Why face ISIS ourselves when we can have Turkey do all the dirty work for us? Now, with that said, there has been some very prudent people who are very experienced in warfare who have condemned or objected to the use of Iranian militias and Iranian military to fight ISIS. One of them is General Petraeus. General Petraeus, who was fired by the Obama administration, said just a couple days ago that ISIS is not the primary enemy. We should not be fixating all of our focus on ISIS as enemy number one, because in the end, ultimately, Iran is going to be an ultimate enemy. And what we have been predicting on Shoebat.com for years is that Iran and Turkey are going to be the major powers in the Middle East. Those are the two that are going to rise, and they are going to reach the apex of power in the Near East. Why do we say that? Well, it's very simple. Turkey is the most powerful of the Sunni nations. Iran is the most powerful of the Shiite nations. Why Obama is working in supporting Iran? Again, I can't really give an explanation without sounding like a conspiracy theorist. But I believe that he's trying to push an Islamist agenda. And Turkey cannot really gain power if it does not show the world that it is a force for good. Now, this is another dangerous thing that we can expect to happen. When ISIS came up as a brutal terrorist group of thugs, people, including myself, were saying online on the internet that what ISIS is doing is true Islam, and I still stand by that statement. The ideology of ISIS and the actions of ISIS are in accordance to authentic Islam. Turkey wants to become the epitome of what true Islam is. So once Turkey helps destroy ISIS, which they eventually will, then the world will look at Turkey as the savior. Let's not forget, we boosted up the image of ISIS as this absolutely, the spawn of hell, the worst of the worst. So whoever destroys ISIS is going to be esteemed as a great hero. And so if ISIS is the true image of Islam, well, hold on a second now. Turkey is a Muslim nation, and here they are fighting against ISIS. So what's Turkey? Is Turkey anti-Islamic? Well, no, of course not. What people are going to be saying is that Turkey is the epitome of what true Islam is. They are representing true Islam. So that is going to, it's going to inculcate this message that we got Islam wrong all along, that the true Islam has just been ignored or it has been doormat. Now we are seeing it manifest itself through the actions of Turkey. And that will give Turkey the opportunity to really take control of the Middle East. Because, to use the Machiavellian mindset, you never let a good catastrophe go to waste. ISIS is a problem. ISIS is a very dangerous problem. So take advantage of that problem, make yourself look like the good guy, and that will justify America allowing you to take control of the Middle East. That'll give you also a justification to increase your own power in the Middle East. So ISIS is going to be the key by which Turkey will increase its image and become the superpower in the Middle East, because it's going to take over. It's going to destroy ISIS. Well, in order to squash ISIS, you have to use military force, and then you have the problem with Syria. You have the problem with Iraq. Who is going to stabilize these regions? Iran and Turkey will come about and act as though they have the solution to these problems. And America will simply allow Iran and Turkey to, like I have said, expand its power in the Middle East and really become a joint partnership. Even though one is Shiite, one is Sunni, it's not that difficult for them to do this, ideologically even. So they will have a joint effort. They will become partners in controlling the Middle East. Not just the Middle East, but the whole Muslim world. That includes Indonesia. That includes North Africa. So it's a very, very scary situation that we are entering in. We're entering we are entering a time when we are going to be seeing the revival of the Ottoman Empire. That's what Turkey wants. That's what this whole thing is about. It's a utopian aspiration, a utopian vision in which the Ottoman Empire is revived. Erdogan is no longer a prime minister. He is now a sultan. Whoever will succeed him in the future, perhaps, they will be sultans. They will no longer be prime ministers. And with the revival of the Ottoman Empire comes the restoration, or I should say, the resuming of the massacres of the Ottoman Empire. And you will see the Ottoman Empire in the future conduct systematic genocide against Christians, especially against Assyrian Christians, Armenian Christians, Syriac Christians, even Coptic Christians in Egypt. So we're entering another Third Reich. World War II is going to repeat itself, I think.
Wow, scary stuff. Again, if you just joined us, this is
very scary.
Indeed, and this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio.com. Thank you for joining us. Our guest this afternoon is Theodore Shoebat from Rescue Christians and Shoebat.com. I want to throw in, you didn't want to be a conspiracy guy, but I'll do it for you. If ISIS is kind of the setup, so then there could be more control because now, hey, we got to fight ISIS. Is it possible that ISIS was set up by, I've heard rumors there's CIA agents, they're set up by someone else. What are your thoughts about that? Is it possible that they're not who we think they are?
This is a very interesting conversation now, because there's a lot of fascinating truths, a lot of fascinating things that we see happening that don't lead us to the conclusion that they're CIA members, but it does shed a light on the idea that ISIS is not just some random group that came up, that there is some sort of conspiracy involved. Let me explain. A few months ago, we found a story on The Independent. It was published on The Independent, which is an English publication. And in The Independent, it explained that according to Pakistani intelligence, because ISIS is all over the Muslim world. They're not just in the Middle East. They have branches in Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, even in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. I mean, throughout the Eastern Europe, Bosnia, the Balkans, they have them all over the place. They're everywhere. They found a Muslim compound in Bosnia with black ISIS flags around them. So they're everywhere. And they have recruiters. Even in the United States, they have recruiters. And so Pakistani police said that they arrested a Muslim man. Everyone in Pakistan is Muslim, that's a given, but they arrested a guy in Pakistan who was an ISIS recruiter. And after interrogating this man, according to the Pakistani intelligence, this man admitted that meaning I'm speaking from his point of view, ISIS was receiving $800 from the United States every time they recruited somebody. And according to the Pakistani intelligence report, it was an ISIS recruiter and a local imam. And they were recruiting youths. And for every youth that they recruited, they received $800 American. This is what the Pakistani intelligence said. So you have this observation. Are the Pakistanis lying? We don't know. Are they telling the truth? Not sure. But very fascinating. It's something that we shouldn't just ignore. And then you have the fact that you have Turkey working heavily with ISIS. This is a fact that no one is really paying attention to. Remember, there was I don't know if you remember, but about 2 years ago there was a major massacre. I'm trying to find the name of the village, but I remember Kesub. That was it. It was the Armenian Christian village of Kesub. Back in 2014, last year, March 21st, there was a massacre in which ISIS invaded the town, butchered 80 Christians, beheading many of them. It was absolutely horrific. And they were sniping random people on the streets. They were blowing people's brains out with sniper rifles. It was horrific. Well, after that massacre took place, there was a leaked conversation between the president of Turkey, Ahmet Davutoglu, who was the second most powerful man in Turkey after Mehmet Erdogan. There was a leaked conversation between Ahmet Davutoglu and several other Turkish politicians. Now, we have the conversation, and we have a translation of it, and we've posted it on Shoebat.com many times. Listen to this conversation. They are discussing the massacre in Kesub, and they are talking about arming ISIS, supporting ISIS, and using ISIS to their advantage. They're saying, let's use them to their advantage. And they talk about a shrine, a very prominent shrine that lies right near Kesub. And it's a shrine of Süleyman Shah, who was one of the pioneers of founding the Ottoman Empire centuries ago. And they have a little tomb there, supposedly. It's like a sepulcher of this sultan. And in this meeting, they said, let's make a scenario. Let's make it as though ISIS is going to damage the tomb of Süleyman Shah. And that we are going to tell people, in order to protect the shrine, we have to send troops into Syria. In other words, let's use the shrine as a justification, as a pretense, to send soldiers into Syria. And that way we have a presence, a military presence in Syria. And this will be just an incremental step into expanding our power into Syria. In other words, it's just one step to justify sending soldiers, and then from there on, slowly begin to send more and more soldiers. Well, this plan eventually transpired a number of months ago. And now they put several hundred Turkish soldiers, several hundred, it was a few dozens, I should say, soldiers into Syria for the first time now in a while. Turkish soldiers in Syria surrounding the tomb. There they are. And they're fulfilling exactly what they said in the conversation. Shoebat.com, my father, Wali Shoebat, actually wrote an article in which he exposed the fact that when you actually go into the tomb, there is no body. That Suleiman Shah died because he drowned in the Nile River. They don't know where his body, they never found his body. So there was no body in this so-called tomb. It's all made up. And the Turks were saying, oh, we have to protect the body of this person. It was all a lie. And in fact, in this conversation that I'm talking about, Ahmed Davutoglu says, he makes it very specific, very, very calculative. He says, let's help ISIS, arm them, give them weapons, and let them do enough damage to give us the opportunity to execute or unleash our military strength in the Middle East. So it's all calculated. Now, but Ahmed Davutoglu, the conversation, he does realize though that ISIS is also a threat to him as well. And they make this very specific in the conversation. We can't give ISIS too much power, and they make it very clear, or else they will come into Turkey and wreak havoc in our own country. So, is ISIS an invention of the CIA? I wouldn't go that far. But would I say that there is a conspiracy in ISIS? Would I say that there is a conspiracy involving ISIS in which ISIS has been helped to become a bigger threat than it would have initially been on their own? Yes, I do believe that there is most definitely higher, more powerful people helping them to make them into this greater threat, so that they could be used as a tool, used as a ploy, really, to really justify the use of the expansion of Turkish power and also Iranian power. And we see that going on right now. We see America working with Turkey. We see the United States working with Iran of all countries. Why? Oh, to supposedly defeat ISIS. Well, who's helping ISIS? Turkey. Turkey is helping ISIS. In fact, they even there was one ISIS militant who was being hospitalized, and he did an interview with a journalist. And in the interview, the ISIS militant said, "If it wasn't for Turkey, we would have gotten nowhere." So Turkey is the one helping ISIS. They're helping ISIS become powerful, and then they're going to cut ISIS off. So they're helping ISIS to become powerful in order to use the power of ISIS to make Turkey look like the good guy. I hope that makes sense.
No, it definitely does, and I'm very happy you explained it to our audience, because I don't think they get the whole picture of what's going on, and it's very scary times. And I want to continue talking about Turkey with you, because on the website Shoebat.com, there's a story talking about Turkey developing long-range missiles, and they're creating a space technology that's going to be better than the United States. So talk a little bit about that. It's very interesting.
Yes. Well, Turkey right now is developing its nuclear armament. They're increasing their military strength more now than ever. Probably more now than let me rephrase. They are increasing their military strength more now since the time since they were crushed in World War I. Let's just put it that way. Because after World War I, Turkey was crushed by the English, and they were weakened, and they became the sick man of Europe, as they were called. And now, since the time they were crushed by the English, now they are increasing their military strength more than ever. So they're increasing their military armament. And one thing I would tell the audience is, let's not just focus on the Middle East. There's other players we have to focus on. Japan. And I know that sounds crazy, but we need to focus on Japan, because Japan is technically not a nuclear country, but it is considered to be a de facto nuclear country. Why do I say that? Because Japan has enough uranium to create nuclear missiles, nuclear bombs within 6 months. They have enough uranium to create 5,000 nuclear bombs. Now, how does this relate with Turkey? because Japan and Turkey last year signed an agreement in which it was agreed that Japan would provide Turkey with its first nuclear reactor. There are no nuclear reactors in Turkey. So they're going to provide Turkey with its first nuclear reactor, and the agreement was that they would provide the nuclear reactor would be in Turkey by 2021, but they want to put it in Turkey faster. So Turkey is interested in nuclear. Now, according to the Turkish government, if you hear what they say, oh, we want nuclear energy because we want to turn green. Yeah, sure. I'm not buying that at all. Since when do Muslims care about environmentalism? They want to use the nuclear power to make nuclear weapons. It's just that simple. If you read the report that we have on Shoebat.com, the one that you mentioned, it says that the excuse given is that Turkey should have the ability to develop its own missiles and space technologies in order to respond to security challenges that could arise from its neighbors. This is exactly what I've been talking about on this show. As a way to respond to security threats. Well, what security threat are they referring to? ISIS. So we need a way to protect ourselves. And so since Turkey is, out of all the Muslim countries in the world, Turkey is the greatest ally that America has. It's the one that America trusts the most out of all the Muslim countries. And so Turkey is saying, hey, we're your ally, you trust us, you respect us, you should respect us enough to allow us to at least secure ourselves. And America is already saying, why not? What's the big deal? They're our friends. Why should we help them? And the philosophy that many Americans are holding is that Turkey is a civilized country. It's a very well-developed nation. It's a very wealthy country, very powerful country. Instead of America policing the Middle East, Turkey can do the job for us. So expect to see Turkey increase its military power. Another scary thing about Turkey, a number of months ago on Shoebat.com, we posted up a video. Ahmet Davutoglu having a meeting with the leader of Hamas. And the leader of Hamas is speaking in Arabic, but he has a Turkish translation. And they are talking about conquering Jerusalem. I think I told you about this on the show last time.
Right, yeah, I talked about last time, yes.
Yeah, and they're talking about conquering Jerusalem. So the only reason why Turkey would be even interested in nuclear energy or weapons capabilities is for one reason and one reason alone, and that is empire. You can't create a good empire without powerful weapons. And if you read some of the words of Ahmet Davutoglu, I'll read to you what he said recently. He said, quote, "Instabilities around us have clearly shown us that Turkey should develop its own missile technology and space technology. We should absolutely have one of the world's most important infrastructures in missile and space technologies if we want to secure our survival in the next century." And it's right there. It's plain as gold. It's so plain. It's so obvious what Turkey wants to do. Use ISIS as a means to justify increasing military strength to therefore revive the Ottoman Empire. Why do you think last year, or I shouldn't say last year, I would say maybe back in 2013, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, had a huge conference. No European representatives were there except Angela Merkel, Germany, which is nothing conclusive about that, but it is interesting. It is, I think, very suspicious as to why Germany would be the only one invited. I think that's strange, but nonetheless, to continue on with what I'm going to say, Erdogan comes into this conference dressed up in white gowns, and the Turkish government made it very straightforward as to why Erdogan dressed up in this very religious attire, because he wants to emulate the Ottoman Sultan Alp Arslan. Alp Arslan was the one who really commenced the Turkish Empire. People say that it was the Ottomans, but Mehmet III conquered Constantinople in 1453. That's true to a certain extent. But if you want to get down to the real timeline, the real point in history when the Turks really become an empire, it is in the year 1071. Battle of Manzikert, Alp Arslan dresses up in a white robe, goes before his army and says, I come not to you as being above you, I come not to you as a sultan, I come to you as a Muslim warrior equal to all of you. And they defeated the Emperor Romanus Diogenes and the Battle of Manzikert, and it was a horrific battle. Most of the Christians were slaughtered, the Emperor was kidnapped, and the Christians had one of the worst victories in Christian military history. And so once the Christians lose the Battle of Manzikert, the Turks enter Asia Minor, which is now Turkey, and they begin to invade almost the entire nation. And they reached all the way up to Constantinople, but they failed to conquer Constantinople. And so that is the beginning, where the Byzantine Empire is reduced only to a few pieces of land here and there, and then the Turks finally utterly crushed the Christian Roman Empire in the conquest of Constantinople, Mehmed II, 1453. So Erdogan, looking into history, he begins the Ottoman Empire, or the Turkish Empire, in the Battle of Manzikert. So here he is emulating Alp Arslan, who defeated the Christians. And he says that by the year, I think he goes on, he says, I think he said something to the likes of by the year 2071 or something, that is when Turkey will be this huge empire and will be at the peak of our power. Well, why does he say 2071? Because the Battle of Manzikert was 1071. So the Turks are not just talking about security. That's all rubbish. And if you believe them, you're pretty foolish. I mean, once you read history and then you read what the Turkish government is doing in light of its history, in trying to restore its history, in trying to bring back its old former glory, and you read about that history, then you realize, oh, that's why they're using ISIS. That's why they want to increase military power. It's to have history repeat itself.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and NewsRadio.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Again, the email is MessiahHour@gmail.com, and you can email the station Israel Sports and NewsRadio@gmail.com. Our guest this afternoon, Theodore Shoebat, and we talk a lot about what the Muslims are doing to Christians in certain parts of the world people might not know about, and I want to talk about a very scary story. I don't even know what to say, but you wrote a story about this yesterday about Muslims opening fire on 4 Christians. They locked them in a room and then burned their bodies.
Yes. Yes.
I know it's pretty graphic and brutal, but I want people to know about what happened, so if you could please tell us.
Well, what happened was that you had 4 Christians in Kenya. They were looking for work, and they made some money, and so they were going to send the money to their families. So they were in a money transferring store. And what happened was that you had a gang of Muslims come, all members of a Somalian terrorist group called Al-Shabaab. They opened fire on the Christians. The Christians are reported to have been killed already, and then they locked them in so that no one could escape. Just locked the store and then set the whole store ablaze. By the time that they found the bodies, they were completely unrecognizable. They had to send the bodies to a specialist who had to test their DNA to figure out their identities. So, and then they went into a different area, I believe in the area of Mandera in Kenya, and they murdered one more Christian by gunfire. So that was 5 Christians dead. And then you have this other story that came out recently of Boko Haram in Nigeria kidnapping 400 women and children. And I haven't posted on this yet, but I'm about to. And it just goes to show you, for one, what the Muslims are all about. They are about slaughtering Christians and creating a kind of a they are. It's a collectivist Islamic Sharia. And one thing that we have to realize, though, is that while we are disturbed by this, we cannot let our emotions take control of us to the point that whoever defeats these terrorists, they are the good guys all of a sudden. And that's one thing that I'm worried about, because I've seen people become very emotional over ISIS to the point where now that the Kurds are fighting ISIS, now that Turkey is fighting ISIS, Iran is fighting ISIS, these are the good guys. We should trust them because ISIS is so bad. What we don't realize is that these are simply 2 dogs, like I said, fighting for the same bone. But to talk more about Christian persecution, there was one story that we posted recently from Pakistan. no one really had this story. Our Pakistani contact sent it to us, and he wrote about it himself, and we simply reported what he wrote. And what happened was that there was in Pakistan, just to refresh your guys' memory, in Pakistan they have these things called brick kilns where they make bricks. Think about the book of Exodus. Put yourself in the book of Exodus, where the Hebrews are building bricks for the Pharaoh and their slaves. That is what's happening in Pakistan. You have literally tens of thousands of these brick kilns throughout Pakistan, where people have to really provide their own materials to make the bricks, just as the Hebrews were forced to provide their own materials to make bricks. Pharaoh forced them to, made their labor 10 times worse. And many Christians are slaves in these brick kilns, also Hindus and other people, but many Christians. And we have been involved in the slave business. Now, before you stone me for saying this, what I mean by that is our team in Pakistan goes to these brick kilns and we buy the slaves out. We buy the slaves out, or what we do is we provide the slave with a false ID. And the slave will say, I need to go visit my relatives, and the slave owner will say, well, you give me your ID. And once the slave owner has the ID, he uses that ID as leverage to guarantee that the slave is going to come back. Well, with a false ID, you don't have to come back. So that helps the person escape. We also buy them out, like I've said, and many times we just sneak them out, plain and simple. And we have managed to actually rescue about 3,000 Christian families who are slaves in these who were slaves to these brick kilns, and we continue to save them. Many times, these Christians are horrifically abused in the brick kilns. Many times, the women are raped. We've had one story, one family that we rescued. The husband was tied with a rope and forced to watch his wife get raped by multiple men. Just horrific stories like that. One story where a little boy was forced to watch his mother get raped right before his eyes. And there was a recent story. We are helping this child now with medicating him, paying for his hospital bills. This child was a slave, and his owner grabbed him and threw him in the oven. Threw him on a pile of hot coals, and he had severe third-degree burns throughout his body. And he survived the attack, thank God, but nonetheless, his burns are going to be permanent. And so we have been there helping, caring for him. So that's what we do in Rescue Christians. But no one really has this story. And we were really the first major website, that is, to actually publish the story and say, this is what's happening in Pakistan. This is what we're not being told. This is a side of Christian persecution that many of us are unaware of. So slavery still exists. Don't let these people fool you into thinking that slavery ended in the Civil War or in the Civil Rights Movement. We have more slavery now than probably more than any other time in history, and it's predominantly taking place in the Muslim world.
Okay, crazy to think about. Last story I want to ask you about. Talk about the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, because
Yes.
he just ordered to destroy all Christians. He's saying that's a new Sharia law. To tell our audience a bit about that.
Oh, it's destroy all Christian churches in Saudi Arabia. Believe it or not, they are churches in Saudi Arabia, but they're like secret churches because Christianity is outlawed in Saudi Arabia. The Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, who really is the head of Sharia law, he is the lawman in regards to all Sharia. So his name is Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah, and he made it very clear that the Saudi Arabian government needs to wipe out all of the churches and to also put more restrictions on church buildings. And he was speaking. When he was saying this, he was speaking to a delegation in Kuwait, and he ordered the destruction of churches in this meeting. So the question then is, hey, if churches are illegal in Saudi Arabia, then why are we obligated to legalize mosques? Because Saudi Arabia is very good at funding the building of mosques in Western nations. They do it all the time. And so the Saudi Arabia is the head of spreading Qurans, making copies of the Qurans and spreading them around all over the Western world. So why? And Bibles are illegal in Saudi Arabia. Churches are illegal in Saudi Arabia. So why should we allow Qurans and mosques to be in Western countries? And yet, when a Western country does make a law against Islam, somehow hindering the expansion of Islam somehow, for example, in Austria, recently they made a law saying that Muslim sheikhs can no longer do the sermons in Arabic. They have to do them in German. You have people in Saudi Arabia who go into an uproar over these laws. You have people in Turkey, Erdogan being one of them, who become very upset and express their hatred, express their anger toward these prohibitions. Well, why should that anger you when in Saudi Arabia people get arrested for passing out Bibles? People get executed for converting to Christianity. So it's a double standard. And yet the Western world, for some reason, thinks that the Enlightenment ideology of freedom for all ideas and all beliefs is more important than logic. It's more important than discernment. And what we need to be doing is discerning what religions are violent and dangerous and what ideas are beneficial for society. I believe Christianity is beneficial for society. I don't believe Islam is beneficial for society. But yet, because we put the Enlightenment above everything at the expense of our own security. And that is going to be our downfall.
Again, fascinating stuff, riveting. I know it's not easy for our audience to listen, but I want them to know what's going on. I certainly appreciate you coming on the program and telling us some of the things the media does not report. Before we let you go, also, the great organization that you're with, Rescue Christians, if people want to get involved, want to make a donation or help in any way, what's the best way they can go about doing that?
Oh, they can go to rescuechristians.org. That is rescuechristians.org, and give however much money you want. For $1, you can put $5, $10, $50, $20, doesn't really matter, because all the money goes directly to helping the Christians that we are currently working to rescue.
All right, so everyone out there, if you're able to give a donation, that's great, because it's a wonderful cause. Theodore Shoebat, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. Great information as always, and I know it's not easy to talk about, but I certainly appreciate it.
No problem, sir. Anytime. God bless you.
God bless you. And everyone out there, thank you for listening. Be well. Again, the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.